Welcome back to our 47th episode of the Launch Your Farm Show, where I interview Kelley Skar with EXP Realty in Calgary, Alberta. In this episode, Kelley and I talk about why email is so important for getting your personal message and your brand out to your farm. Kelley shares how to use unique strategies to grow your database with engaged followers that actually look forward to getting your emails. And we talk about what you can do to get more business from your database by creating relevant content for your audience by focusing on 2 specific types of emails per month. And we share a super easy way to come up with content ideas for your emails that get more opens and get the phone ringing. Plus, we talk about how to tie in your email marketing into your overall farming plan to get the most from your efforts. Plus, a ton of other ideas that you can use to grow your geographic farm. So be sure to check out the episode, like and subscribe, and enjoy the episode with Kelley. Welcome back to another episode of the Launch Your Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Kelley Skar with EXP. You're out in Calgary. So Kelley, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here.
Hey, Ryan, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you having me on today. Can't wait to dive into the farming podcast.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. So I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta. I am, as you mentioned, I'm a realtor practicing, have been for the last 15 years. Also the founder of a company called Rewritten, which focuses on providing, solid content for real estate agents, with their email marketing efforts.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I really want to dive in today about email and how important that is, because in your farm, it can be a huge powerful thing that you can have and a lot of agents aren't doing it right. So I want to dive into kind of like what works, what doesn't work, and kind of your experience. So before we get into the nitty gritty, but let's talk about your own personal experience in real estate, and then we'll move into that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been licensed for 15 years. I'm in my 15th year right now. August of this year will be official 15 years. So, in that time, I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of things, seen a lot of things. I started as a solo agent, solopreneur, if you want to call it that. I started a team in 2012, and at the end of 2012, 2013, ran that team successfully until 2015. I merged my team with a small boutique brokerage here in Calgary. We wound up shifting the model, going away from a team-based brokerage, and wound up building that brokerage to a traditional model. I was instrumental in building that brokerage from 9 agents to 105 when I left that brokerage in September of 2019, and went back to being a solopreneur and wound up bouncing around a little bit until I figured out just what the hell I was going to do. I wound up at a Remax brokerage, wound up at another large independent franchise here in Calgary before I landed finally at EXP in December of last year.
Nice. So for you, obviously email is something you're passionate about, something you're obviously you do it for a business. Talk about that and how that kind of evolved, because I think it's important to know why you got it started and how that came about.
Yeah. So the reason I brought up, the former company I was with and building from 9 to 105 agents in the span of about 18 to 19 months. The reason I bring that up is because in large part, we did that through creation of content, and most of that content creation was done through email. And I was the guy that was creating that content and sending those emails out to agents in our marketplace. And so, we did a combination of things. We had a podcast, we did events, in-person events. We promoted those events through email marketing. We also, gave away a lot of really free and good and actionable advice through that email content. So, agents would, digest the content that I'd be sending out, and either they'd implement it or they wouldn't, or they would, they would get enough value from the emails that we were sending or that I was sending out to the agents. And eventually they'd wind up, attending one of our events, which would then obviously lead to some sort of in-person, conversation. And, obviously they would wind up joining after that. That's how we grew. And so with that, part of the other thing that we did was something, it was like a marketing plan or a marketing package that we put together for the agents. And part of, and so what I was doing with my team is I was already doing a lot of the email marketing for my team before I joined this other brokerage. So I brought that skill set into the brokerage already. And so what we were doing is we would, every time an agent would join us, they would come in, they would give us their database. We would upload it into our Infusionsoft account, and I would email their database for them on their behalf twice a month. And it would look like I would write the content, but it would look like they wrote it, and it would
Right.
look like it came from them because it came from their email address specifically,
Yep.
and it had their email signature specifically, right? And so when what I started to realize was I would have agents coming into my office, like we would do like 2 sends a month, right? So bi-monthly. So I would get agents after every send, I would get an agent coming into my office saying, "Hey man, thanks a lot for the email this month. The phone's ringing again. People are calling me, like, I don't know what you're doing there, but keep doing it."
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, this is really, I might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Right. So I just kind of kept that in the back of my mind. And then eventually when I left, I was like, Jesus, I really miss the content creation side of things. And I want to really get back into this. And so, how am I going to do this? And so when I started thinking about all of the conversations that I would have with these agents, it was just a natural progression. I was like, okay, well, I'll just utilize the same software that I was using and, attract by giving away really good free content through, webinars and email marketing and that sort of thing. And start to build a database that way. So
it's awesome. Yeah. And I think it's something that a lot of agents struggle with. I know my own experience in coaching and training agents and seeing it. Most agents don't have the mindset for writing emails, and they usually do them one of two ways. They either write them as like, it's just a quick, hey, like they're having a conversation, or they make them into these giant sales pitches and it's all just full of like stuff. And it's not really getting people to respond. It's either just pushing a message out there or it's just a quick conversation. So I want to start with the fundamentals, because I think start with like what you kind of feel as the fundamentals of email marketing are, and then we can like start building off of that.
Yeah. So just to add to your point, the reason why agents don't focus on the most underutilized tool in their toolbox, which is email marketing, is exactly to your point, because they don't know how.
Yeah.
They don't know where to start. They don't know what the type of content to send. They don't know the cadence. They haven't done the research. Like they don't know what they don't know. Right. Yeah. So when a guru gets up on stage and says, "Oh, you got to be tapping into email marketing. And oh, by the way, here's my services." And, it's going to be the same generic bullshit content. Yeah. Am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. Because I might drop a few more, but it's the same BS that, a lot of other companies are sending out. I'm not going to mention them by name, but it's the type of crap that gets sent out to databases in email newsletters, in snail mail newsletters, the 35 different ways to clean out your gutters, right? The top 5 Aunt Sally apple pie recipes for the month. It's like, nobody reads that garbage, right? And so, this is how I found this out. I tell this story actually in the webinars that I do, but I'll try to be as quick as I can here. I had a client call me up. This is way back in like 2011, I think. And I was utilizing a company. They were doing all of my email newsletters. They're also doing my snail mail newsletters. I had a client call me up and he's like, "Hey, Kelley, have you got a couple minutes?" "Yep." This is a guy that I used to work with, a friend of mine, sold him a place out in, Langdon, sold his place over in Southeast Calgary, helped him and his family move, did a couple of referrals for him, so him and I, we've got a really good relationship, and it's like, he can call me up and call me out on my bullshit whenever he feels I need to be called out. Right. So he calls me up one day and he says, "Hey, I want to help save you some money." I'm like, "Okay, what do you got?" He says, "You need to stop sending these newsletters." I go, "What are you talking about?" He says, "I don't read them anymore. I haven't read the last 6. Like for 6 months, you've been sending me this crap and I'm not reading them. They're going right into recycling." I'm like, "Well, why aren't you reading them?" He says, "Well, number one, because I know you didn't write it. Number two, I know that the crap, that the content that's in there, I don't need to know the 35 different ways to paint the siding on my house. Like I have vinyl siding. I'm not going to paint the vinyl siding. So it's not going to happen." Right. So I was like, wow, okay. That really kind of enlightened me a little bit. So I called 5 other of my clients that I had the same kind of relationship with, people that I can make that phone call them an advisory council, call them like your A clients, whatever you want to call them. Right. So I called up these 5 different people. I'm like, "Listen, you're getting my snail mail newsletter, right?" "Yep." "Do you read it?" "Nope." "Why?" "Because we know you didn't write it and it's crap content." I'm like, Jesus. Okay. So that's all I needed. I had 6 people that I knew, that I liked, that I trusted. I trusted their opinion. And I was like, "I'm sold. Okay. I'm done." So I called them that day and I was like, "Okay, I'm canceling my subscription." "Well, why?" "Well, because, my clients just aren't reading the content that you're writing." Right. So I knew that in knowing that, having that experience moving forward with rewritten and writing the content that I write, I knew that I didn't want to write generic crap that nobody was going to read. And so when I started doing the email marketing for my team, when I started doing it for the brokerage, I knew full well that if I were to write up stuff, the top 5 Aunt Sally, pumpkin and apple pie recipes, nobody's going to open that up. And my agents are going to come back to me and they're going to go, listen, I'd rather you didn't send anything. Like my job was to get the phone to ring, right? And the phone isn't going to ring with that type of content. So foundationally, my feeling is that agents really need to understand the way that they speak and they need to write like they speak. Right. So if you're really highly educated and, you know a lot of big words and use a lot of big words in your everyday life, then put those big words into those emails. Right. If you drop a lot of F-bombs like I do in a day, I'd probably recommend that you don't put a lot of F-bombs in your emails. Right. But, try to write like you speak. Try to make it sound like it's your voice. That's number one. Number two,
I want to add to that because I think it's important because a lot of people feel that they have to be this perfect technical writer. They go back to their days of I was in school and my teacher critiqued me and said I was spelling wrong or this wasn't right and I had to have perfect structure. And the reality is most people don't even read that way. Most people don't even take information that way. And they want to get, like you said, a conversation in the way that you'd speak. And I know from my own experience, when I started writing blogs, I wrote them. I was literally like, it's just, I'm dumping from my brain the way I would think about something. And I had a bunch of people reach out to me and they're like, man, like, I love the way you write because it's like I'm in your head and I can hear you saying
I can hear your voice speaking to me.
Exactly. So it's, so a lot of agents I find don't start because of that. They think they have to be this perfect thing. They have to be an English major. And reality is like, you'd actually write better not being an English major and just writing the way you speak. So that's
some
awesome.
of the best content creators that I've subscribed to that I read, I mean, some of their spelling is atrocious, right? But I mean, it doesn't matter. The content is like spectacular, right? Like Ryan Fletcher wrote, he writes amazing content. His spelling isn't the goodest, right? But whatever. I mean, he wrote this piece of content the other day that I read. It was about a $500 tequila shot. And it was, did you read that?
No, I didn't.
So him and his wife and his kids were on holidays and he gets his kids to do these challenges every once in a while. And he's like, okay, I want you to take this cup, this Yeti cup. I want you to go out and I want you to get me a tequila shot put into that. And his one kid's 11 and the other one's 8. Okay. So they're at this all-inclusive resort in Mexico and the kids are like humming and hawing. And he's like, okay, well, do it for $100. And they're like, no, $200. No, $300. No, $500. The daughter's like, okay, fine. I'll do it. Right. So she goes out and she winds up getting like a double to 2 tequila shots put into this Yeti cup. Anyways, the point is the way he wrote the story had me completely engaged. And so, when you look at that kind of in a case study type mindset. When you look at the content that's written, number one, it's a story that he's telling. Number two, he's not trying to sell you anything. Number three, there is a message behind what he's putting out there. And number four, the way in which he wrote the content is digestible. And what I mean by that is a lot of people, for your listeners on the podcast and Apple Podcasts, I'm holding up my iPhone right now. A lot of people don't realize that over 60% of the content that's consumed through email is done on a mobile device. They don't realize that you're not writing for people that are opening up in your laptop or your desktop. You are writing for people that are looking at that content on their phone. And so, foundationally, this comes back to my point number 2 is that point number 1 was, again, to recap, number 1, write like it's your voice, right? The goal is to have the reader actually hear you in their head telling the story, right? Number 2, write the content so that it's digestible on whatever device they are reading that content from. And that doesn't mean, going back to your point about being an English major, that does not mean exact perfect sentence structure. Doesn't mean you need to have 2 to 3 sentences per paragraph, right? Just make sure that your spelling is on point and that your story is on point. And if you got a 1-sentence paragraph, do that. Right. And like this piece that he wrote was really, really long. Like I was scrolling, right? But I was digesting because the story was so good.
Exactly. And I find his writing and others like him where they'll use like one word, a couple like a few words in the sentence, ... and they're spacing, and then you read it and you're like, and and you're looking to see what's coming next. And if it's just all a bunch of big blocks of paragraphs, you're just like, and you just scan over it,
right?
And you don't read it.
Yeah, man. And I've listened to the guy's podcasts for years now, right? So when I read his content, I hear his voice reading that piece of content to me. So that's what the agent has to understand. When I'm out with a buyer and I'm showing that buyer 30 homes before they purchase a property, there's a lot of conversations going on. They're hearing my voice a lot, right? They're seeing the text messages that I'm sending to them a lot, right? So they're getting an understanding of how I speak, tonality, phrasing. They're understanding the types of words that I use. So when I write that piece of content and I send it out to them, there's a very good chance that they're actually hearing my voice in their head as they read that content.
Which is great. That's what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then that's point number 3 is telling the story, right? So, is there a story to tell around statistics? 100%. Yes, there is. Right. The last thing that you want to do is make stats freaking boring, right? Because nobody's going to read them. Nobody likes to read stats, but so I wrote one email. And it was, the email was, what does Robin Williams and what's the Latin phrase for seize the day? Carpe diem. Yeah. What does Robin Williams, Carpe diem, and Dead Poets Society have to do with real estate? That was the subject line. Right. And then it was, I wrote this piece of content. And, I talked a little bit about Dead Poets Society, talked about how he jumps on the desk and Carpe Diem, and then, kind of talked a little bit about statistics. And then down at the bottom, it was like, real estate is a lot like this scene in this movie. You have to understand that seizing the day, seizing the opportunity is key. It's first and foremost. So make sure that when you're thinking about selling or buying real estate, that you're thinking of me first, or whatever I said, right? Getting that proper advice. So thinking outside the box, we do a Wednesday mastermind. Every Wednesday we do a mastermind at 9:30 in the morning. There was a post that came up in the Calgary Realtor Facebook group, and it was a brand new agent. And she came in there and she said, what advice? I'm a brand new agent looking at going full time. What advice do you have for me? And it was freaking crickets for like 24 hours. Nobody posted anything. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to help this gal out. So I jumped in there. I posted 5 points. I put a couple more points in there. And I kind of left it at that. And then the post kind of took off. Everybody's kind of chiming in. So I'm like, Jesus, that's a great idea for a mastermind. I am going to look at doing that. Sorry, I just got to turn off my notifications there. I'm going to look at doing that for our mastermind. I think this would be really valuable for my community. Right. And so it's like you pull ideas from everywhere. That's the other key point as to why agents don't want to write, is because they don't know what to write about. Yeah, exactly. But my point back to them is, listen, if you've been in real estate for any amount of time, you have an endless supply of stories, right? An endless supply. So, you just need to start digging in and figuring out where those stories are and how you can relate it back to real estate and back into an enjoyable, digestible, bite-sized type story that your clients are going to want to digest.
Exactly. And I think with farming, it's even easier too, because you can then tie it to the community, and then it's easier. Where if you're trying to get a message out and you're sending it to all different people all over the city, all in other cities, you have to do something that's kind of broad enough that will appeal to people. Versus if you're focusing on your geographic farm, you literally can write your message about what's relevant to them, what matters to them, what's happening in their community, and it'll be more impactful because it's geared to their needs, what's happening in their backyard, and that'll be something that they'll resonate with.
Yeah. And that's why I always suggest 2 emails per month, right? One is stats based and the other one is a little bit more specific to what's happening in the community. So, I'm in Calgary. It's, we've got a population of 1.4, almost 1.5 million people, which is just mind boggling to me. I moved here at the end of 2003. And I think the population was just over 1 million people. So it's grown by leaps and bounds over the last, almost 20 years, but, you can still, even a city this size, you can still write content around community. You can, as like the community as a whole, right? I don't have to dive in. Like I service every area of the city, every quadrant, every neighborhood, right? So I'm not going to write content specific to each one of my clients' neighborhoods, that would just take me way too long. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on what's happening in the community. So I'm going to look at Narcity. I'm going to look at local blogs. I'm going to go to the City of Calgary website. I'm going to look for local content that I can tie back into. If I've got somebody that's, posting really good content, I'm not going to be afraid to link to their content into my email and, bring a little bit of exposure to them. That's what community is all about.
Yep, exactly. And I think you can also do it from a national level and an international level, and take it from that macro level and bring it down to that micro level. I know Tom's story out in Toronto, he does that well, where he'll take a national thing about what's happening in real estate and then do a video around that and break it down and say, hey, how does that affect you here? How does that affect you in your life here? And you can then take that where you're not even having to come up with the original content. You're coming up with the secondary original content. Like you get that idea. Like you talked about the inspiration from something can come from anywhere. It could be, it doesn't have to be real estate specific. It could be news, it could be just stuff that's happening in the community, and really just share it that way.
Yeah. I think the other issue with real estate agents is I don't want to sound like I'm picking on them. I kind of am, but another one of the issues is agents are just afraid to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. I mean, somebody asked me, how's the market? I'll tell you. Right. Yeah. I had a call from a guy from the Niagara region here the other day. He's looking at moving his family out to Calgary. He's like, listen, do we rent first or do we buy? I'm like, the market's on fire here. If you can find a rental for 6 months, find a rental.
Yeah.
Right. I said, I think the market's probably going to soften towards the end of the year. You might be better off looking for a place, come October, November, but nobody wants to say that because they want the friggin' sale right now. Oh no, the market's great. You got to buy right now. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, look, we're advisors here. Don't be afraid to have an opinion, but make sure that you're going to be on the right side of history, I guess.
No.
And maybe that's the reason why agents have such a hard time actually voicing an opinion, because they're afraid that they are going to be on the wrong side of history, right?
Yeah, they don't want to look bad. And I'm sure you follow Russell Brunson.
Yep.
With ClickFunnels, and one of the things he talks about is drawing that line in the sand and saying like, hey, this is what I believe. Here's the side of the line that I'm on. And he said, you got to be polarizing, not extreme polarizing, but enough that people go, hey, what's Ryan thinking? And what's Ryan talking about? What does he believe? And that's something I had to do with with my show and everything else. And for me, I'm writing a book right now, and I call it Farm Manifesto. And I'm drawing the line saying, here's what I believe farming is and where the future of farming is. And here's what it's not. And you can do that in your own emails and your own communication and say, hey, here's what I think is going to happen with the community. Here's what I think you should be doing. And it doesn't have to be predictions. It can just be, here's my advice. Here's what I've seen. Here's my experience. But you gotta put your neck out there a little bit. Yeah.
So specifically to the students that go through your course, the people that you've coached, if they're looking like you were on our show there last week, you were on our mastermind there last week, and you had talked about, what was the area that you were in?
The Orchard.
The Orchard, right? So you created the Orchard real estate team, and then started creating content around the Orchard, right? You started building that email list. You started, farming that community. So look, like this is the thing when it comes to email marketing. If you're focused on a community, if you're doing the farming strategies that Ryan talks about, that talks about deploying into your business, email marketing is a huge component, huge factor of that, right? Because number one, what you're going to do is you're going to get out there, you're going to door knock, you're going to, bring that thing of value, like what you talked about, that, that market report, here you go. In exchange of value, I want something of value from you, which is probably going to be your time, your attention, and potentially your email address, right? So if you can, and this is something that I've always coached agents around, if you're going to go out and door knock, go there with something of value, and the exchange of value is the email address, because within the email address comes time and attention. And so if you can spend that really, really wisely, the opportunities for you to go from, like you said, from, looking at it from a macro level, from one to many, quintuple, sextuple, put a number on it, doesn't matter, right? Right. So I go out one time or two times or three times, and I go out and I door knock 1,000 doors, and I get 500 email addresses. What do you think the odds are of me going out and door knocking 1,000 doors again? Probably slim to none, right? Because I'm going to focus my time and my energy on communicating to those 500 people so that I can get at least one sign on the ground that can then do what? Give me an opportunity to get more signs in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go back to that point you said about, offering something of value, because I think that's important, because that's where I find a lot of agents struggle in that they go, okay, how do I actually get them to sign up? How do I get them to get them to put their hand up? And one of the things I explain to agents all the time is that it has to be valuable enough that they're willing to put their hand up and actually do it. And it has to be something that is interesting to them. just saying, hey, do you sign up for my newsletter isn't going to be enough. And I use the example, if I'm at the grocery store and they say, hey, would you like to sign up for a chance to win a $100 gift card? I'm putting my receipt in my pocket. I'm not going to sign up. Now, if they said, hey, go on right now and you'll get $5 off your next order, I'm more likely to do that. I was at a KFC and the guy said, listen, fill out the survey right now. I'll give you a popcorn chicken thing right now. I was like, well, frig, I'm going to get a popcorn chicken if I fill out the survey right now. I'm like, well, it moved up the offer for me going, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I did it and got an extra popcorn chicken. So you have to have something that's worthwhile enough that they're going to want to fill it out. And then you can then follow up. And like you said, you're buying the long-term attention of them, not just the right now. So it's got to be valuable enough. So I was going to ask you is, what have you seen work well to get people to put their hand up, and how are you getting agents to actually collect emails?
So COVID has brought about a lot of things, right? And one of the things that I'm starting to see is this resurgence of QR codes, if you can believe it. Like, so think about this, dude. Like, you're going to, yeah, no, I know, but you go to a restaurant. So this happens in Alberta. I spilled coffee on my shirt. You can totally see it. I'm just going to go over here so you can't see it. So you go to a restaurant, right? This happens here all the time. So they don't, because of COVID, they're not giving out their menus anymore, right? They have a QR code in the middle of the table. They say, okay, scan. So you no longer have to download an app. Yeah. All you need to do is open up your camera on the phone. You put the camera, you don't even have to snap a picture. You just put it over top of the QR code. A little box pops up at the top, a notification. You click on that and it takes you to that spot. Right. So imagine for a second. So let's say you are outdoor knocking, you are farming that area. You've got that item of value, that market report, and it's got a big ass QR code on there, right? To sign up for, not market updates, but community-based information. Right. So think about the audience that you're, trying to get that information from. Think about the type of content that they're going to actually want to consume. Yep. Right. So if you're in an area that's got a large demographic of families, yep. right, you're going to want to focus that QR code, whatever is on the other side of that QR code, around family oriented content. Right. Yep. So it could be, there was a guy here in our market that was doing weekly updates. He would send out like a weekly email around what was happening on the weekend, right? Yeah. So he'd send out an email on Thursday talking about all of these family activities that were happening on the weekend. And, as a guy with 2 kids, right, I'm like, God, that's some valuable content. Yeah. Right. If I got that email and we're struggling for something to do, and it's like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Kids are like, well, I don't know. We just want to be on our devices. We're like, no devices, right? Well, let's go for a hike. Nobody wants to go for a hike. Well, hey, look, they got food trucks down at the casino parking lot, and there's a big line. They got all kinds of stuff going on, and, balloons and, clowns and blah, blah, like whatever. Yep. Right. Or maybe it's the drive-in theater, right? Or whatever it is, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to go, hey, well, let's go do that thing instead. Yeah. Right. So, that's what I would suggest. If you're outdoor knocking, you're out farming that area, and you want to get people to sign up. So if you're not comfortable asking for that exchange of value, handing off that market report and going, here, the next time I send this to you, it could be via email. If you want more valuable content like this, just give me your email address and I'll put you on the list right. But most people are going to probably say no to that. It's the same type of analogy that you just used, right? Going through the checkout line, if you fill out the survey, you could win $100 versus the guy at Popeye's Chicken. If you fill out the survey right now, I'm going to give you Popeye's Chicken right now. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I would suggest that if you're going to utilize a QR code, which I think is a great idea, by the way, having that on there, taking them to a landing page, a la, ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson, taking them to a landing page and, just describing the type of content that they're actually going to be signing up for. And then, having that sign up page, tie back into whatever, if you're using MailChimp or you're using ClickFunnels or you're using Infusionsoft, whatever you're using, right? And now it ties back in, and now boom, you're building a list. Yeah. I was at an Infusionsoft conference back in 2016, and Ryan Dice was on stage, digital marketer, right? And he said something that was really important, and it just really, I've never forgot it. He said, "He who has the biggest list wins." Yeah. Right. It wasn't he who has the best open rates. It wasn't he who has the lowest unsubscribe rates. It was he who has the biggest list wins. Yeah. And why? Why is that? Well, when you've got a big list, you can really start to narrow that funnel down and bringing people into that sales funnel, which is the goal of every salesperson, right? And you've got to think about email marketing. You've got to think about launching your farm as a sales. It's another tool to build a sales funnel.
So that's perfect, because it ties into what I was going to ask you, is that you mentioned the sales funnel. What are you doing, or what would you recommend for agents to take them from that regular communication to getting them into putting their hand up, reaching out to you, and taking that next step? Because again, I'm not a big fan of just pitch. It's communicate, pitch. So what do you find works, and how would agents do something like that to take it to the next level?
So can you reframe the question? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking.
How do agents go from, okay, I've got a list and I'm sending them content, or I'm communicating with them, to turning it into, how do I get people to put their hand up and say, hey, I'm thinking about making a move, rather than just, because you could just email people over and over again. They never think about you and never hear from you. And then you don't get.
Yeah. So what I would do is, number one, I would look at what my open rates are. Number two, and I know I just went through this, but most agents don't have a list of 10,000 people in their database. They just don't, or 6,000 or 5,000. They'd be lucky if they've got 100 or 200 or 500, right? So first thing that you need to do is you need to look at your open rates. You need to look at your unsubscribe rates, and you need to look at a couple of key metrics. The key metrics are time of day and day of the week, right? I can sit here and tell you stats all day long on study after study after study that have been done, like companies from HubSpot to MailChimp to whatever, to Infusionsoft. But your list is very specific to you, right? And your list is going to open up your emails from you at very specific certain times. And you're going to wind up getting the best open rates for your list with the type of content that you're going to send out. So number one, understand the day and the time that you're getting the best open rates, and start focusing on those days and times to actually send the content. Number two, if I'm looking at the type of content that I'm sending out, and I'm relating it back to open rates and the days, I'm going into that content to see what type of content is actually getting the best open rates. Right now, that content may not line up perfectly with the best days and the best times, but it doesn't matter. What you're trying to do is try to understand the type of content that people your list is wanting to consume. Number three, or number four, I guess, you have to understand the type of content that your list is willing to consume. Right. If all you're doing is pumping out statistics, you're probably going to have a high rate of unsubscribes, because this is one of the key things that you have to understand. The people that are on your list right now that purchased last week or last year or 2 years or 3 years from now or 3 years before, they are not in the sales funnel. Right. The last thing that they are thinking about is buying or selling real estate. Right. And so any guru out there that tells you, well, you got to, jump on your email list and you got to fire off an email and say, who do you know that's willing to buy or sell in the next 30, 60, 90 days? If you want to increase your unsubscribe rates, go do that. I invite you to go do that. If you want to get rid of, completely alienate everybody in your list, go do that. Right. So understand that the type of content that's actually getting, and look, if you're not having any success with email marketing, if the type of content that you're sending out isn't generating any open rates, then you really need to sit down and rethink the type of content that you're sending out. So again, if all you're doing is writing statistic-based email from an engineer perspective, the only people that are going to appreciate that are engineers.
And they may not even, they may not even care.
And they
got better data somewhere else that they've got. So
that's right. But also understand that the majority of your list is not in the sales funnel. They're not looking to transact right now, or even in the next 30 or 60, 90 days. So in knowing that, what type of content should we be putting together that's statistically based? I typically recommend 3 to 4 data points, and they are days on market, average or median sale price, and what is the sales to list price ratio? So meaning, what are houses selling for? Their list price, and what are they selling for, right? Is it 2% off? Is it 3% off? Is it 101% of the asking price? What is that metric, right? And then there's a very strong call to action. It's look, if you want more information, if you want a 5-minute CMA, if you want to sit down for a coffee, you want to talk about this stuff. If you don't, hey, no problem. But here's my phone number, call or text me anytime. Right. And I always end off the email with a very strong call to action, but tell a story around the stats. Right. So if you're going to give people a quick market update of what happened in the previous month, make it entertaining, make it compelling, make it so that the subject line is part of that key key part as well, right? Yeah. That subject line is that hook. That's what's going to draw them in. That's what's going to get them to actually open the email. Exactly. If you've got an email subject line that says, statistical update for the month of, April 2021, that ain't going to work. I'm sorry, exactly. Bud. It just ain't. Like, it's not going to help you, right? Yeah. So you got to be creative with this stuff, right? So, let the creativity juices start to flow. Tell a story. Yes, stats matter. Yes, they do. But understand your audience isn't probably looking to transact right now, today, or even in 30, 60, 90 days. So again, come at it from a community-based perspective. So email one is going to be, talking about statistics, 3 to 4 key metrics, strong call to action. Email number 2 later in the month is, focused squarely on community. Yeah, right. This is what's happening. And, don't be afraid to start that. Like, if you're going to do a weekly email, like a Thursday email where it's like talking about what's happening, the world eventually is going to open back up. I promise you, right? We're already seeing it in the US. So it's only a matter of time before it happens here in Canada. So, as the world starts to open up again, there's going to be more and more things that happen in the community. And so if you can really tie into that and be that resource for people, I mean, they're going to, that Thursday email rolls around. Like, I know you're familiar with, what's his name? He does 5 Bullet Fridays. He wrote the book, 4 Hour Work Week.
Oh, Tim Ferriss. Yeah.
Tim Ferriss. Yeah. So I subscribe to I've been subscribed to his emails for probably the last couple of years. He does this thing called 5 Bullet Fridays. Yeah. Right. And it's like, 5 bullets. So it's like the 5 things that are going on in his life right now. So he talks, this is what I'm reading. This is what I'm eating. This is what I'm drinking. This is the exercises that I'm doing. This is the interesting thing that I'm doing, at some point in the future. This is what I'm training for, whatever it is. Yeah. Right. So I enjoy getting those because I'm like, oh, well, that's a cool book. Maybe I'll check that out. Or, oh, that's a cool energy drink. Maybe I'll check that out or whatever. Right. Yeah. So it's the repetitive nature of it that's easily consumable, that is entertaining and informative.
Yeah. And I think going back to what you said earlier is that it's science and art. And it really is, because you have to learn to track it. There's an art form of communicating, and then there's the science of it. And a lot of agents are afraid of the science side of it. And it's like, if they just figure that out, if they learn to track the numbers, if they learn to track the metrics, they could massively change the impact. I know when I got started, I dove into direct response marketing and understanding email marketing. And I started with like 18% open rate. And then I tweaked things, changed things, and I got it to like a 43% open rate. So I'm like, I more than doubled how many people saw my response with the same size list. And it's just, it takes some getting used to, and there's going to be times where you're going to send emails and they're going to flop. I just sent one from my Launch Your Farm last week, and it was my worst one yet, and it flopped. Right. And then there's other emails where you're like, man, that really took off. So you have to give it some time and you have to tweak it. I find the mistake that a lot of agents make is they do the exact same thing. Don't change anything. Don't tweak anything. Don't do anything. And it's like, man, you could be getting so much more, or it's like, you're not reaching people. And it's like, you're just missing out.
Well, one of the biggest excuses that agents like to make is I just don't have time. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just don't have time to sit down and write that email. And I'm like, okay, so are you selling 8 to 10 houses a month? Well, no. So you're not doing 100 deals a year? Well, no. Okay. Well, then you have time. Yeah. Right. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how many deals do you do a year? Well, 25. So you're doing 2 deals a month? Yeah. Well, I got to run out and do home inspections and, put lock boxes on listings. I'm like, yeah, but you're only doing 25 deals a year. Like, of course you have time. Yeah. If you think that you don't have time and you're only doing 20, and look, I'm not saying only to be derogative. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, if you're doing 25 transactions a year and you feel like you don't have time, you don't have an email marketing problem, bud. You've got a time management problem. Yeah. Right. I could do 25 deals a year standing on my head and not feel like I even broke a sweat. Yeah. Right. I mean, but that comes with experience. I mean, when you're systemized and you've got process. So,
and I think the great point about that too is that I'd say probably most agents aren't willing to do that, aren't willing to spend the time to do it, and aren't willing to commit to learning it and growing it. And like you said earlier about with COVID re-shifting, a lot of agents gave up on things. A lot of agents stopped their email lists. A lot of agents weren't doing the marketing they were doing. Yeah. So there's a huge opportunity to regain market share right now and be that person. There were people who were doing events. There was people who was out and about in the community. Now they're not. It's like, if you're willing to put your neck out there a bit and start doing those and think further ahead, going, okay, COVID's going to wrap up soon at some point. I have an opportunity to really connect with the audience. And I think there's agents who can really crush it in the next year if they do it right.
Yeah. The like email marketing agents really should have been focusing on that over the last 15 months.
Yeah.
Like that should have been a major focus, especially people that were doing events before that can't do them now.
Yeah.
Like I was coaching one agent. She was, she does email marketing. I mean, she does a great job of it. She had these like big in-person events pre-COVID. She shifted everything online. We moved everything online, and she's doing these pizza parties. So she'll go to a local pizza shop in her neighborhood, and she'll get a bunch of gift cards, right? And she'll go and drop them off at these people's houses throughout her community. And then they'll have a pizza and wine party on a Friday night over Zoom.
Nice.
Right. But here's the thing though, is that it isn't just about going and picking up the card and then announcing it on Facebook or throwing out one email. There is a sequence, there is a campaign built around that, right? There is a system, there is a process. Like, I've got a couple of agents on our team right now, and they both speak Spanish, and they're going to be doing like a Spanish language home buyer seminar. I'm like, okay, well, here are the 4 key points to doing an online seminar, right? The number 1 point is communication. Yeah. Like, how are you going to pre-communicate to people to get the word out? How are you going to post communicate once they've signed up? And then how are you going to post communicate after the event? Right. So you're not doing this because you just want to, be on video, be on camera and give away some really good information to 1 or 2 people. Yeah. You want to have as many people in the room as you possibly can, so that at the end of it, afterwards, you get as many signups as you possibly can, people that are wanting to buy and sell real estate. Right. So communication is absolutely key. And, again, coming back to email marketing, that's what this is, right? Because events got canceled, people really should have been focused more on email marketing. Unfortunately, they weren't. Some people are going to try to pick it up. A lot of people were subscribing to, again, coming back to this whole idea, well, I don't have time. I don't have time to sit down and learn this. I don't have time to sit down and write these emails. That's why I'm these companies, well, company like mine, right? That is, kind of taken off. There's people that are signing up for it every day. Yeah. The thing is that they don't have time. If I can write that content for you, make it personable, make it so that it sounds like you wrote it, I mean, that's a win there. Yeah. Right. As opposed to some of these companies where it's just generic BS. Yeah. Right. And that's where a lot of, some of these companies have really flourished, because they're tapping into that. It's that shiny penny. Those agents are like, well, I don't have time to do this, so I'm just going to go and hire this big company over here, and they're going to do my snail mail newsletter. And the snail mail newsletter is going to be the same as the email newsletter. And it's like, well, why would you bother sending both like the content on both mediums? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me, but.
Well, that perfectly wraps up into our final segment on your best piece of advice. So what would you give if people are thinking about getting started with email marketing and they are feeling overwhelmed? Let's say they're not too busy and they want to do their own. What advice would you give?
Just start. I mean, it's that simple. An idea without execution is complete insanity. Yeah. Right. I mean, all you're going to do is beat your head against, well, I got this great idea. I got this great idea. And it's like, okay, so when are you going to do something about it? Yeah. Right. So I've got this great idea for this email marketing campaign. Okay, great. When are you going to do something about it? Right. Yeah. So, well, I don't know how to get started. Well, that's a limiting belief. It's, paralyzing fear. You need to get over yourself and get over that limiting belief and just go do it. Now, that's really easy for me to say. Well, the biggest piece of advice that I've got is just to start. Well, there's going to be a lot of people that are probably watching or listening to this and saying, well, great, Skar. Thanks a lot. I don't actually know where to start. Yeah. Right. So what I would suggest are these 3 key points. Number 1, do you have a list? If you don't have a list, make a list. Okay. That's the absolute key. If you're in this business for any type of amount of time, you've got some kind of a list, right? All of your past clients, all of your potential future clients, any online lead, right? Anybody that's given you their permission to email market to them. A lot of people say, well, e-alerts aren't a form of email marketing. There's implied and express consent, blah, 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 blah. Look, they signed up for your website. They gave you their email address. You were marketing to them. Yep. Email content is just another piece of marketing. That's all it is. So yes, there is consent there. So understand that you need a list in order to be able to hit as many people. Number 2, the platform is important, right? Yes. So don't go to something like I've got like Infusionsoft that costs, $400 a month. That's crazy. Like there's freemium versions out there. Like MailChimp is free up to, I think 500 contacts. And then they start charging you after that's $9.99 a month. Yeah. US. It's like $12 Canadian or something crazy, right? So it's relatively inexpensive to get started. So number 1, make the list. Number 2, select your platform. And then number 3, in terms of getting started is understanding the audience that you have and the type of content that you want to send. Don't start with, well, how many times do I have to send out per month? Kelley's saying 2 times a month. And I'm like, that isn't where you start. Where you start is with the type of content that you're actually going to be sending. So start there, start with that type of content. And then the cadence it'll naturally happen. Start with 1 send a month, and it'll eventually, like at the height, when when we were building the brokerage, I was sending out a piece of content a week, like once a week. It was every Friday I was sending out another email, and our open rates, the best open rate I ever had. Mind you, my list was to real estate agents, but it was like 63%.
Wow.
Like that's a crazy open rate on a list of like 5,000 people.
Wow.
Right. That's a lot of eyeballs on that email. Right. So, the content's got to be good. And, you really, a lot of times you only have one chance. I mean, people that are on your list, Ryan, that are listening, they're listening to you, they're reading your content, the email that you sent last week, I can't remember it. I'm sure I got it. I can't really remember it. I'm sorry. It just wasn't memorable. I'm just kidding.
It wasn't. That's why it bombed. So.
Yeah. But you could repackage that email, send the same messaging out to that exact same list with just a couple of tweaks, like you said, right? Tweak in the subject line, maybe a tweak in the type of content or the structure of the content, and then pushing that out, and boom, watch, like your open rates could skyrocket, triple, quadruple what you did previously.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
that's awesome.
It's obviously a lot more than just get started. Understand that you need a list to be able to do email marketing too. That's pretty elementary, I would think. Number 2, go out and source out the platform that you're going to utilize. And then number 3, understand your audience and the type of content that you need to be sending out to generate open rates.
And email's not going away. And that's the thing. So it's like, you need to learn it. And if you want to succeed at a high level, it's something you got to figure out. So there's a learning curve. It's going to take some time. You're going to have to figure out those hurdles up front. But if you do that, and you're willing to do it and commit to doing it, you'll grow, and you'll grow your business, and it will be worth it. You want to get to the point so that you are so busy that you really don't have time for emails.
That's right. 100%.
So we always wrap up with a best book. So what's one book that you would recommend that's changed your life, or has had a big impact, or you think would have an impact on our viewers?
I'm looking over at my bookshelf right now. There's a few of them over there. I'll tell you, probably foundationally, the one book, and it might sound a little cliche now, but quite honestly, man, this is the one book that absolutely changed my direction in my entire business. I read early on, and it was Gary Vaynerchuk, and it was Crush It. Yeah. And it was that simple. Like I've got 2 copies. I think I've got one as a signed copy. I mean, it opened up my eyes to a new way of doing business. And the greatest chapter I think ever written in any book was in Crush It. I can't remember which chapter it was, but that entire chapter consisted of one word, and it was care. And that was it. Like just care, right? So care about the content that you're sending out, care about the end user that's going to consume that content. If you're a real estate agent, care about your community, care about your client, right? And all of this stuff will come back to you. Everything that we're talking about in terms of referrals and repeat business will come back to you. And if you take great care in the type of marketing that you're doing, whether it's, geo farming or email or online or whatever it is, it will come back to you.
Yeah. That's a great book. I just read it for the 3rd time again a couple of weeks ago. It's a must read, and read it again, because you're always at different places in your business and different thoughts, and it's always good to re-go through that.
I read it in one night. Like I picked up the book. I went and heard him speak here in Calgary. I think it was like 2010, 2009 actually. And I got the book and brought it home, and I read it in one night, and I'm like, oh, damn, this just changed my life. Like it really did. Yeah. An amazing book.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the show notes so people can check that out. So if people want to check out what you're up to, want to check out about the company you're working on, if they want some help with their emails, how can they find out what you're up to?
Yeah. So they can go to rewritten.com. So it's REWRITTN, not EN, just TTN, rewritten.com. Go there. That's the homepage. I mean, there's some good content on there that you guys can consume. If you have questions, if you want to know more, if you want to have a consultation call, we can certainly do that as well. My number's on the website. I think I have a Calendly link on the website as well. So if you wanted to book time with me, you can certainly do that and make it as easy as we possibly can. So I don't want you to sign up for a product that you've never test driven before. So, there is an opportunity for you to kind of test drive it, look at some of the type of content that has been emailed out that I've utilized in my own personal business as well as with the brokerage. If you go there and you sign up on that page, you'll get emailed a copy right away of our top 10 best emails based on open rates.
Nice.
So
That's good.
that'll give you a good start. The type of content that you can expect. So
it's a good value in exchange for their email. So that's good.
There you go. Exactly right, buddy.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the show notes so people can check that out. So Kelley, thank you again for being on here. You were on my last show a number of years ago. You were a great guest. You're a great guest again. I know you brought a lot of great advice, great insight, and honest insight. And that's what's really important, because for a lot of people, they want the fluff. You give the hard facts and the truth, and it's awesome. And I know our viewers, if they're serious about their marketing and their email marketing, will really take this seriously and really hopefully relook at what they're doing. So thanks for bringing your wisdom and your experience to the show.
I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.